Summary. Finally, Hunter's mission, the one he was specifically made for, is completed. Now what? Chapter 13 looks to the moon. Hello, little creatures. Her voice croaked, distorted, and static. The two creatures seemed to perk up slightly as she spoke, exchanging a small glance between each other. She looked around the flooded room she was situated in. She was sitting on top of an island made of rubble. Glancing upwards, she saw sunlight peeking through a hole in her can. Speaking of her can, it wasn't responding, none of it was, no matter how hard she tried to reach out and connect. Turning back to the little creatures, she looked them over in turn. The red one was scarred and slightly taller than the other. They had a spear strapped to their back and one in their hand. The other was bright white, with a partly healed, grisly-looking wound spread over a large part of their torso. She noticed with a start the mark of communication floating above the red creature's head as they lowered the spear in their paw to the ground, perhaps as a sign of goodwill. Its ear twitched slightly. She guessed it could understand her then. Glancing upwards, she saw her neurons only a measly 5 hovering above her head. This was all she had left now, everything else was gone. She curled up on her little island, putting her arms on her knees and resting her head on top of them. After a moment, she looked back at the creatures. They were still standing as they were earlier, patiently, as if waiting for her to continue. Little creatures, you did this. The red one nodded in response, while the white one looked over to him in what appeared to be confusion. The white creature tapped the red one on the shoulder, getting them to turn and look at them. They chirped and meowed, seemingly communicating with each other. Meanwhile, she took a moment to try to reach out to her systems again, trying to reach her memories. Nothing happened. The little creatures seemed to be done talking as the red one turned to look at her, a silent acknowledgement for her to continue. One moment. My memory isn't responding. I have no idea. She stopped to think, and after a moment, the creatures jumped into the water and paddled over to her little island. They got up but stopped at the edge, apparently not wanting to crowd her. She appreciated the sentiment. She felt a little overwhelmed at the moment. She glanced down at herself, noticing small parts of her blue, metallic body covered in rust, scratches, and various other signs of wear and tear. How many cycles had it been since her can collapsed? She could not recall. Must have been gone for 100, maybe 2, or 1,000. She realized she had no idea, not even anything close to an approximate measurement. Now that the creatures were closer, she could analyze them in more detail. Or, well, she would be able to if her systems had responded to her inputs. She would have to make do with a quick, rudimentary scan instead. Running a quick analysis on the red one, her heart dropped in sadness at what she found. Oh! The red one perked up and stepped closer, getting on all fours and crawling towards her. She reached out a hand, and they sniffed at it for a moment. Little creature. The creature nuzzled into her hand gently, emitting a rumbling noise that shook their body. You are not well, Moon said, sadly. The creature looked up at her with sadness in its eyes. Perhaps it knew of its illness? I am so sorry to say, but you do not have much time left. The red one whined quietly as she carefully ran her hand through its short fur. The white one approached and chirped, seemingly in worry. The red creature chirped and meowed back, and the white creature's ears pinned against its head as it let out a small sound like a saddened whimper. If things are as they seem, thank you. She turned to address the white creature, even though she knew it couldn't understand her. Both of you. Despite not understanding her, it seemed to get the gist, nodded, and crawled closer to her. She reached a hand out and petted the white one as well, and it responded by making the same rumbling noise the red one was making. She looked back at the red creature that had crawled closer and curled up into her lap. I don't know why you spent your last remaining cycles helping me, but know that I am deeply grateful. She smiled, scratching the creatures behind their ears as they both chirped happily. I have known very few beings who could aspire to such a noble thing. They stayed like that for a bit longer, enjoying each other's company. Before the red creature carefully got up, stretched, and stepped back, sitting in front of her, the white one followed suit, both creatures looking at her with wide, beady eyes. You both really are amazing little creatures. She sighed, frowning. I wish I could say I will always remember it. The creatures seemed to notice her sadness and whined quietly, crawling back towards her, seemingly to comfort her. Suddenly, the red creature froze, its eyes widening and its gaze unseeing. The white one noticed immediately, looking over and meowing in concern. Little creature, are you all right? The creature didn't respond, it just sat there completely still for a bit longer. Then it started convulsing, falling to the ground as it spasmed uncontrollably and painfully. Oh no! The creature's friend yelped in fear and ran over to their side, crouching down and crawling close, rumbling in an attempt to comfort the creature through their seizure. Meanwhile, she watched the creature roll around in pain. There was nothing else she could do in the state she was in. After a minute, the attack left as soon as it had arrived, the red creature stilling on the floor, breathing labored and wheezy. The creature meowed quietly, making a rough and painful sounding noise. The white creature responded by rumbling loudly again in an attempt at comfort. She grunted quietly with frustration. Was there nothing she could do to help her saviors? Her thinking capacity was greatly hindered compared to what it used to be when her Ken was still standing. Still, she tried her best to remember if there was anything that could help cure her newfound friend. Then she remembered who could help, her neighbor and brother, 5 Pebbles. She remembered that he used to be able to help some of his citizens when they were infected by many different ailments. He wasn't designed to cure diseases, but he could lower and slow down the symptoms considerably. Though, with what his predicament was like last time they interacted, she wasn't too sure if he could do much. Her heart sank as she realized he might not even be alive. What if he succeeded with what he'd set out to do all those cycles ago? Whatever the case, if Pebbles was still around and his systems were healthy enough to help her friends, it would be worth the risk. Turning towards the creatures, she noticed the red one looked a bit more healthy, standing on its feet, though slightly leaning on its companion for support. I may know of a way to help you, little creatures. The red one perked up slightly, vocalizing a weak chirp, its ear twitching as she spoke. The white creature seemed to perk up slightly as well, despite the fact it could not understand her, likely noticing the red creature's curiosity. She smiled before continuing. My brother, 5 Pebbles, might have the ability to slow your sickness and perhaps even help you get rid of the worst of your symptoms. She sighed sadly. Their journey to Pebbles would be long, grueling, and difficult. Looking back to the creatures, the red one was listening intently, while the white one just stared blankly in confusion. She continued, his kin is not too far. She trailed off. It wouldn't be enough to explain the journey to the creatures, it would take too long, and they probably wouldn't remember all the information. Thinking deeply, she remembered another way to guide her new friends. Focusing, she sent out a call to all her overseers to come to her location. Once the signal was sent, she looked back at the creatures, who were looking at her in deep confusion. One moment, please. She clarified, and the red one nodded, waiting patiently. After another moment, one of her yellow overseers popped out of the ground in front of her, bouncing around happily at seeing her awake and alive. The little creatures were startled at the overseer's sudden appearance, with the red one reaching towards its spear and moving into a combat stance. Don't worry, little creatures, she urgently spoke before the creatures could make a potentially harmful mistake. She sighed in relief when the creatures calmed, and the red one straightened up, giving her an apologetic look. It's okay, my friends. She gestured to her overseer, and it went into the ground before popping up in between the creatures. They flinched before studying her overseer curiously. My overseer can show you the way to my brother's can. In response, the overseer displayed a holographic shape resembling 5 pebbles, along with an arrow pointing them towards the exit. The journey will be long and difficult. She said this, looking over the little creatures. The red one was still listening intently, while the white one seemed more distracted by her overseer. It made sense, considering the white creature could not understand her. But you have made it this far, despite your illness and injuries, so I have hope in your abilities. The scarred creature nodded, though it looked a bit unsure about it all. I wish you the best of luck, little creatures. She nodded towards them, and the white one took it as a sign to leave, nodding back, turning around and jumping into the water. The red one stayed on her island. It hesitated for a moment before crawling up, leaning close to her face, and giving her a grateful lick. She giggled, scratching the small creature behind the ear again. The creature smiled at her once more before turning around and jumping into the water, joining their friend, and swimming back the way they came. Before leaving, the white creature stopped and turned to look at her, waving a paw in goodbye. She waved back, and the little creature turned around and walked out of her sight. She glanced around her flooded room, sighed to herself, hugged her knees close to her body, and closed her eyes. Stay safe, my friends. Survivor sighed in relief as he and Hunter crawled through the shelter pipe, popping out into a small room with simple straw matting on the floor to make the hard floor more comfortable. The shelter was slightly damp. There was moisture in the air, but it wasn't uncomfortable enough to be unbearable. Hunter wordlessly crawled into a corner of the shelter and shivered, curling in on himself. Survivor felt his heart break as he saw his mate in pain, still recovering from the harrowing convulsions he suffered while conversing with Moon. Survivor reflected on the meeting with the god-type being as he crawled closer and cuddled into Hunter's fur, purring in comfort. During the talk, Survivor hadn't understood a single word Looks to the Moon had said, but Hunter seemed to be able to understand everything, though it didn't seem like he could answer back. Survivor guessed the strange robot being was probably equally confused about what the slugcats had discussed. There was certainly a language barrier there. Hunter hadn't relayed much information, which annoyed Survivor. Had she told them about their next destination? Of the location of a cure? Hunter hadn't said anything about what she said. He just looked a bit pensive and unsure about the whole thing. Not to mention that weird yellow, worm-like thing that followed them around as they moved towards the shelter. Was it meant to show them the path to something? A path to the cure, perhaps? Survivor sighed, figuring the best way to get answers to his questions was probably to just ask Hunter. His mate already seemed to be half asleep. Still, Survivor tapped him gently to get his attention. Hunter. Hunter hummed in response, shifting around until he was facing Survivor. What did Moon tell you? Hunter averted his eyes, avoiding eye contact. About finding a cure, I mean. Survivor clarified. His mate seemed to hesitate for a short moment before finally speaking. She said there was a cure. Survivor chirped happily, feeling hope in his heart. Her brother, 5 Pebbles, apparently can cure it. The little yellow worm, or as Moon called it, her overseer, knows the way and wants to guide us. Hunter's voice sounded emotionless as he spoke, which disturbed Survivor slightly, but he chalked it up to tiredness. With a laugh, Survivor wrapped his arms around Hunter, pulling him into an embrace. He didn't notice the way his mate tensed or the tears streaming down his cheeks. That's great news, Hunter, Survivor exclaimed, nuzzling into the other slugcat. And with a guide, there's no risk of getting lost. With a grunt, Hunter pushed Survivor off him. It was a gentle push but still quite powerful. I don't think it's worth it. He eventually mumbled, barely loud enough for Survivor to hear. Survivor paused, his frown melting away into a look of concern. What? The trip to 5 Pebbles will no doubt be long and dangerous, Hunter said, looking at the floor. Taking that risk isn't worth it. He glanced up at Survivor, gesturing to himself. I'm not worth it. The white slugcat couldn't stop a small whine from instinctually exiting his throat. He moved to sit in front of his mate and put both paws on the red slugcat's shoulders. You don't mean that. Survivor responded, voice shaky. Hunter's gaze suddenly hardened into a scowl as he pushed Survivor off him, getting to his feet. Look at me, Survivor, he shouted, gesturing to himself. My illness is already limiting my ability to breathe, focus, and move around properly. Survivor got to his feet, reaching out towards his mate, before deciding against it and coming to the conclusion that physical contact probably wasn't the solution to this situation. He opened his mouth to respond, but Hunter beat him to it. What will we do when I'm so sick I can't move, let alone fight, Hup? His tone turned aggressive and harsh. Then I'll carry you the rest of the way, Survivor responded defiantly. I won't let you just give up like this, Hunter. The white slugcat was startled as Hunter suddenly barked a loud laugh. So that's what will happen to me? I'm destined to just become a burden. Survivor frowned, unsure of how to respond. Hunter put his paws to his head, his ears pinning back. Isn't it ironic? He said, chuckling mirthfully. For all my genetically enhanced strength and endurance, all I really accomplished was delivering a single payload. He smirked wickedly, wildly gesturing to himself. Bit of a waste for someone literally created with the express purpose to be a stone-cold killing machine. His smirk dropped, turning into a scowl. Then again, I was literally made for this. This was my purpose, Survivor. Hunter's face suddenly fell, looking haunted and fearful. I have no more purpose, no more reason to live. We will find you a purpose, Hunter. Survivor said, taking a step forward and reaching out a paw towards his mate. Hunter flinched back in response, backing into the shelter wall and shaking his head. You are so much more than just a killing machine. Hunter suddenly turned angry again, baring his teeth and growling. I was created to kill. With my sharp teeth, my predatory diet, and my enhanced abilities, he looked down at his paws, studying the claws for a moment before clenching them into shaking fists. I was sent on this mission because NSH would know I could handle any threats thrown my way by ripping and tearing through everything. He took a deep breath, suddenly seeming calm as his paws unclenched and he lowered them to his sides. Hunter looked up at Survivor, his sunken-in eyes filled with great pain. It's in my name, Survivor. I am the hunter, I hunt, and I kill. That is my express purpose, and when I lose the ability to do that, what am I, then? Nothing, that's what. He sank to the floor, tears streaming down his face. Just leave me behind, Survivor. Hunter curled up on the floor, covering his eyes. You deserve someone better than this monster. Survivor stood shocked for a moment, completely heartbroken at his mate's breakdown. Was this how he saw himself? Slowly, he approached, sitting down in front of his mate. You're not a monster. The red slugcat stilled before looking into Survivor's eyes. Why is that? His tone was still aggressive and argumentative, as if there was a discussion to be had. He took a deep breath, looking deep into Hunter's eyes. You remember the cycle we first met? Hunter's cold stare turned into a confused one, but after a moment's hesitation, he nodded slowly. When you saw me getting chased by that lizard, you were completely out of its sight. Hell, it didn't even know of your existence. Hunter tried to look away from his eyes, but Survivor gently grabbed hold of his chin, keeping his head in place. You could have easily just let the lizard eat me and then moved on. Instead, you wasted the energy to save me. Survivor smiled softly. Not really something a stone-cold killing machine would do, Hunter huffed, opening his mouth to argue, but before he had the chance, Survivor pulled him close into a hug. You are not a monster or a killing machine, Hunter. You are smart, brave, and compassionate. Survivor's voice was slightly muffled by Hunter's fur. You are that and so much more, believe me. He tightened his grip, stroking the fur on Hunter's back. I promise we will find you a purpose, and throughout all of it, I will never leave your side, Hunter. Even if we're both at death's door, I will always stay with you, I promise you that. A sob was heard in the quiet shelter as Hunter wrapped his arms around Survivor and started bawling loudly. Survivor kept stroking his mate's back, purring in an attempt to comfort Hunter. After a while, Hunter's sobbing ceased, and Survivor pulled back slightly to look into Hunter's eyes. A couple more tears streaked down his face, and Survivor wiped a couple of them off his cheeks. Survivor, Hunter suddenly spoke, his voice hoarse and broken from all the crying. Yeah, if you believe we can make it to 5 Pebbles to get him to help cure me, then we will go. He said it with determination in his eyes. Survivor chirped happily in response. If we don't make it, we can at least say we tried our hardest. Hunter chuckled in response, planting a gentle headbutt on Survivor's forehead. I love you, Survivor said after a moment, licking Hunter on the nose. Hunter chirped, a weak but undeniably happy sound. I love you too. Gently, the slugcats sank to the floor, snuggling close against each other. Hunter started hissing in pain, attempting to snuggle even further into Survivor's side. In response, Survivor wrapped an arm around his suffering mate, hugging him close. His pain hissing slowly died down and eventually stopped completely, replaced by snoring. Survivor licked his mate one more time on the forehead, before settling down to sleep, finding it more difficult than usual to relax. There were too many thoughts of what to do next bouncing around in his head, but eventually, exhaustion claimed him and he joined his mate in deep sleep.
He looks to the moon, and an existential breakdown. Hunter needs therapy, both of the Scugs do. Sad smiley.